Blog Talk Radio.
Hey, everybody. It's India Irie and Cami B on Expanding You Radio, back with a brilliant episode of the synchronicity of the 21st century superhuman, where we are going to get some more fabulous tools on mastering how to live our life as 21st century superhumans in this quantum lifestyle we are now being presented with. Let me welcome to the show my wing woman extraordinaire, Cami B. Say hello, my love.
Hello. I'm so excited for the show. As you know, this is like one of my favorite things to talk about, and I know that it's going to be one of those shows that, like, once you get a taste, you're going to want more. So.
Oh, yeah. It's pertinent, it's relevant, it's new, it's now, and it's hot. So today, guys, what she's talking about, we are going to be schooled. But this time, it's not going to be indoctrination like we're used to. We're going back to the School of Love Awareness. And to help us get a grasp on what we're going to be understanding today, we're going to speak to the director, the founder of the School of Love Awareness. Let us welcome to the show the lovely, the wonderful, and amazing Drew Sinnott. Welcome, Drew.
Hey, India, Cami, good to be here. Thanks a lot. Cool vibes you're playing there.
We are living life like it's golden. It's not just a song. We're going to put it into practice, and that's some of the things that you're going to tell us today, how we can do that and overcome some of the bullshit. I want to give a little bit about who you are, because you are absolutely one of the shining stars that are incarnated on this planet, because unlike so many, you were very keenly aware at a very young age. And that's important, because that means you set your feet on the ground on a path that was already just predestined in the stars, it seems. And I was reading in your bio, like, things started, undulating for you when you were 12, and people were coming for you for advice when you were 14, and you've taken the path of what I call, like, the ancient masters is something that I enjoy also, is studying all of these different disciplines and going through all of the ancient and sacred social customs, the religions, and the texts, and all of these things, because that, to me, is a sign of a Renaissance awareness. And when I say Renaissance, it's fully encapsulating all that there is available and making it practical and pertinent to now. So tell me a little bit about your story. I don't want to just read it. Tell me about your life. What has brought you to this point?
Sure, I mean, it's interesting to hear you say that. It's always interesting to hear people say that, because I hear it from the outside in, you know what I mean? For me, it just happened the way it happened, When I was 4, I think, that was my earliest moment of a conscious awakening. I remember being in the kindergarten and feeling this profound lucidity kind of come down out of the sky, and then just seeing things as if they were transparent, and realizing that the quality of consciousness I was involved with at the time was quite crazy, and seemed to be very unaware and fragmented and so on. And I think the major realization I had after that was when I was 12 years old. It kind of built from being 4 years old. And so when I was 12, I had kind of a heart awakening, spiritual awakening. I felt myself merging into everybody around me. And I felt as if I could hear them talking in their hearts, in their souls. And the major thing I was aware of was how unhappy people seemed to be, and how confused people seem to be about happiness and how to get it. And I was just listening to this incessant dialogue of complaining to themselves and so on and so forth, which is, of course, very human. And that really provoked me to take myself out of school at the time and start educating myself. So I started to meditate and study Taoism and Buddhism and Vedanta and things like this. And my first experiences of meditation were profoundly joyful. And so this encouraged me to carry on and to, unfold, making observations and studying human psychology. And so this is what I've been doing for the last 31 years. And when I was 14, people came to me, or the conversations would just unfold in terms of people asking advice about personal things, how can they deal with stress, etc. And, the funny thing is the same advice I was giving at 14 is what I've worked on and developed to this day, and it's expanded itself into this thing I call the School of Love Awareness. So it's been an interesting journey. There have been other points on the journey which were very profound. For example, when I was around 28, I took myself off onto a prolonged spiritual retreat in nature and was doing hours of meditation every day, lots of fasting. I had a profound Kundalini experience and really just tried to put all of my energy and consciousness and all of my resources into creating a system of education which actually values, honors, and recognizes the fact that awareness itself is the fundamental vehicle that we use for anything we learn. And so by cultivating awareness, we can learn anything, more integrally, and we can also solve all the problems that we're facing. So sure, it's been a long journey. It's been very colorful, but where we are today is we have a school. It's based online at the moment, although we do seminars all over Europe and indeed sometimes in California.
Okay.
And so it's really about consciousness, and it's about transforming the causality of conflict and stress and expanding awareness for everybody.
You're on the right station then, expanding you. We're going to expand everybody while they're listening. Go ahead, Cammy.
I was just thinking he just described the path of every ascended master and their end game, so we resonate.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Now, I want to get into sharing some of the bits from your website and the information and the teachings and the type of opportunities that are available in your educational foray, actually. But there's a term that we see on there, and I just want to get some clarity in the terms that we'll be bandying about. Now, we talk about Buddhic consciousness on the website, which is to me is very intriguing, and I have a concept. I understand what that means, but for anybody who doesn't have a clear understanding of what the difference is between Buddhic consciousness and Buddhism, could you clarify that for the listeners, if you would, please?
Love to. Yeah, thanks for asking the question. So just before I do, on the website, on the homepage, there is actually a link which goes to the School of Love Awareness blog, where the concept of Buddhi is clarified for anybody who wants to read it in more detail after the show.
Oh, yeah.
So basically, the word Buddhi is a Sanskrit word, which is the root language of the Indian and Indo-European languages. And basically, it means awareness, pure awareness. Obviously, it's become synonymous with Buddhism. And indeed, the Buddhist religion does contain a massive significance and focus on Buddhi as pure awareness. However, I'm not really using the term in a way which is connected to Buddhism. The way we use Buddhi in the School of Love Awareness is really just to talk about what love awareness is. You could say that Buddhi is the Sanskrit translation of love awareness. So, for example, to clarify it a little bit more, on the homepage of the School of Love Awareness, I talk about different levels of consciousness and how they're basically expressions of different elemental energies. And so in the human being, we have, the basic 5 elements of earth, water, fire, air, and space. And then we also have electromagnetic energy, so magnetic energy and electrical energy. So we have 7 core elements in the human being. Now, Buddhi itself is like a field of pure, pristine, transparent light, which is actually what consciousness is. And this particular light of consciousness is actually a reflection, or rather the radiation of the effulgence of magnetic fluid. So if you imagine that in the universe, at a core level, the energy of the creatrix who manifested this universe is magnetic. It's magnetic fluid, which is super subtle, and this is like the Divine Mother, or Shakti.
Absolutely.
Now, this is very shiny, and the shine from this, the effulgence from this, is Buddhi. So this is what I'm talking about. I'm talking about a level of pure consciousness which pervades everything, which we have innately as human beings, and also pervades everything, of course. But as human beings with egos, or the ability to focus energy, what that means for us is we can actually contact this Buddhic energy and then bring it into the other bodies that we have, and so expand awareness in the bodies and on their planes of consciousness. So this is something that we're integrally doing in the School of Love Awareness. That's why it's called the School of Love Awareness, and this is why we're focusing on awareness as the primary vehicle for education. So it's very much about knowledge through love, through engaging intimately in transparent consciousness with something rather than knowledge as information, where you're separated from the object and you have inferred information about the surface of the object. We're talking about actually falling in love with the subject, becoming the subject, being in that magnetic love synergy, and then from within the heart of the subject, experiencing the light of consciousness, pure consciousness, and knowing the inherent nature of the subject. So
this sounds like a brilliant explanation, definition of, we did a show just yesterday, last evening, Cammie and I, on free energy and the topic of this plasma energy that is part of conducting the free energy devices. And like, that was a completely different conversation, but again, we're back to the same electromagnetic fluid.
It's exactly the same thing, Plasma, basically. When you're using plasma in technology, like, for example, how Tesla used plasma, he was using a man-made technology to create effects with plasma in a plasma sphere, which is what this universe is. It's a plasmaverse. And as human beings, we are a mini universe, and we have electromagnetic energy. This is how our soul is composed, and this is how we create. And so, to put it into scientific terms, we have plasma bodies. You could say that the physical body is obviously the physical element, the etheric body is the water element, the astral body is the fire element, the mental body the air element, and the causal body the space element. And then within that, we have electromagnetic fluids. And so we're a mini universe, and plasma is completely equatable with electromagnetic fluids. So sure.
You're fully talking on the right brain side of what we talked about on the left brain side yesterday, and how, none of the planets are plugged in, and none of us as bodies are plugged in for these reasons that you're now explaining from. Actually, you're explaining them from both a left brain and a right brain side perspective, which I think is helpful, because if people don't have the mechanics, it's hard for them to actually drive the car properly.
Sure,
I've heard of the Heart Math Institute, because it's describing heart coherence a lot. And we talk about that a lot on my show as well.
Very important work.
Yeah, it's a really, really good device for sort of honing in on these skills that you're talking about.
Yeah, it's very important work, the Heart Math Institute. Great for child development and balancing the brain hemispheres. And certainly one thing we've tried to do in the School of Love Awareness is provide, intellectual, rigorous research for people that need the information on that side, but also experiential practices and tools that people can engage with to actually realize these things. So on the website, we have a host of this kind of stuff. And we recently brought out our first book, The School of Love Awareness Toward an Integrally Humane Sociology, which basically unfolds the entire thesis across almost 400 pages. So for anybody very interested, you can go on the website and download that book as PDF right now. And this will explain the science of consciousness that we use in the School of Love Awareness.
Go ahead and give the URL for your website. We'll give it again before we come to the end of the show.
Sure.
But since people are hearing you, talk about the bits that are on there, go ahead and give people what the location of your website.
Okay, so it's just School of Love Awareness as one word. schoolofloveawareness.com is the URL.
That's
and
nice.
Then from there are links to the various blogs that we have, and there are links to various other social media that we run as well. So anybody interested can look around that website and become involved with the system. We have MP3 meditations to download, so you can experience everything that I'm going to talk about in this show by using the meditations or reading the book or doing our seminars and so on and so forth. At the moment, we're creating a new range of educational materials. So there should be a game of love awareness coming out sometime 2015.
Oh, that's brilliant. And if anyone didn't catch that, the links are also, if you're streaming the show on your PC or your laptop, the links are at the bottom of the show description. So if you just scroll down a bit past the window, the viewing window, you'll see those links are located on the show page. So if anyone didn't get those, they're absolutely there, and we will be reiterating those before we come to the end of the show, because there's so much information jam-packed there. We probably won't even get through it all in 2 hours, but let's carry on. I know that as human beings here, we've forgotten who we are, and we tend to take this life so very personally. Talk to me about the nature of suffering as dualistic confusion, and tell me about what's going on with the lack of non-dual awareness and dual awareness.
Well, that's another great question, India. Thanks for asking. Basically, the thesis that we use in the Schools of Awareness is that the world we live in and experience today is a result of our quality of mind and our thoughts of yesterday. So what we're experiencing is actually perfect, and it only goes to show us that we really don't understand the nature of suffering and the nature of conflict. We keep experiencing conflict and suffering day after day. Indeed, the world situation seems to get worse week after week. And yet all we do is approach the problems in the same manner, which is always within structures of duality. So we have, the people versus the state, or, the poor versus the rich, or whatever versus whatever, when in fact that's the problem. To see things as a duality just compounds and refracts the duality, so chaos leads to further chaos. The basic indication from the situation in the world is that we need to master duality, or master the consciousness of duality, and be able to create, but be able to stay connected consciously to a non-dual state where we're not going to get into all these conflicts and misunderstandings about what we're doing. So basically in the Schools of Awareness, we try to focus very simply on two core elements which relate to everybody, and that's conflict and stress, and to give practical tools to understand and educate ourselves about this, and to actually resolve the inherent dualistic states of consciousness which stress and conflict unfold into a state of non-dual awareness, so we can actually get some, experiential, lasting satisfaction and get connected to a pervasive non-dual field of life energy, so we can relate to other people with power and love and wisdom instead of fear and separation and conflict. So, there's a great possibility in the world right now because of all the problems we have. The darkest night preempts the brightest dawn. And so if we see things in a positive way, the idea of a renaissance in education where we would actually come to grips with the problems that we've unfolded ourselves could be an amazing thing. I mean, we could really transform human consciousness and create a new level upon which to build true education, true humane culture. And this is how I really see the conditions. It's given to us to deal with and be responsible about, rather than just to fight with each other about,
I'd say at this
Absolutely.
point it's moving out of theory and potential into it's really happening. And there's so many of us out there that know how to draw the map for people to get out of the labyrinth, as I said. And I call it the polar coaster, what you're talking about. And people are sick of riding the polar coaster. They're dizzy and nauseous, and they just want to know how to get the hell off. And that's what we're here to show them how to do.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I understand that what I've said is very easy to say, and there are many people experiencing profound suffering. And so, I say what I say with an awareness and respect for that. However, the point is that we've all collectively unfolded this, and we all must take responsibility for it. So in the Schools of Awareness, we have two core practices in that sense. The first practice is a spiritual tantra called Violet Diamond Tantra. And in that practice, it's an educational meditation where the person can become aware of the nature of stress being based on desire and being based on duality. So, you are the agent of your desires. There is a duality there. You feel separated from something you want, and you have to get it, and it's outside yourself. And then when you get it, you're going to be happy to the extent that it has inherent happiness within it, okay? And so within that particular practice, we can educate the consciousness to become aware of how basically all desires that we have as human beings come back to the very point of wanting the highest quality of bliss and joy, which, in a generic sense is contained within sexual ecstasy. So the Violet Diamond Tantra educates us to become aware of that sexual ecstasy within us, which underpins all desire and therefore all frustration and therefore all stress, and basically uses our consciousness, 24/7 if we let it. So it makes us unaware and ignorant as well, and it's tyranny. How to bring the awareness back to that innate ecstasy within ourselves and into its non-dual form. So how to collapse the positive and negative or male-female polarities within our own energy fields into a non-dual ecstasy. So we actually experience lasting satisfaction within our consciousness. And so this is an educational tantra. It teaches a person to causally transform the basis of stress or the causality of stress. And in so doing, it educates the person about how that's happening, how they're allowing that to happen by pursuing, ignorant campaigns and ignorant desires and so on, which is all a part of life, of course. But it also takes consciousness back from those things. So it creates consciousness, it creates greater awareness, as well as wisdom and bliss, etc. So that's one of the practices. And the other practice concerns the resolution of conflict. And so with conflict, we have a similar thing going on. There's always a conflict between two entities, right? It's another duality.
Yeah.
So, it's me versus you, or us versus them, or whatever. There's always a reason. But it's a duality. And the duality is underpinned with fear. So, basically, we're scared of somebody else's potential power. So we posture and pretend that we've got more power than them to keep the conflict at bay, or we get into a conflict to see who can win. But it's always a question of being scared of the other person or the other entity's power because we don't know if we can digest it and stay alive or stay true to ourselves, So fear is based on a lack of perception of our own innate power. And so by becoming aware of the non-dual energy field inside ourselves, which is, an omnipresent field of life energy, if we become aware of this, and if we relate to other people or entities, beings, etc., from that place of power, we actually breathe them in through the ego and through the fear into that field of power, which is love, then we can experience an empowered, loving interbeing and interrelating, which mitigates the need to have conflicts based on fear. So again, we teach practices like this in the School of Awareness. They're educational practices to transform the causality of conflict and stress, and in so doing also create awareness, which we can use for education.
And that's so very important, I feel like, because in this time of transition from our paradigm is sort of opening up our fields of opportunity and what's available, even what's visible and knowable to us. At this time, people are struggling to overcome, just as you're saying, that duality and that polarity consciousness that always says it's right, it's wrong, or it's good or it's bad, or
Sure.
It's for me, or if it's not it's for me, it's against me, or if I'm not the victim, I'm the victor. But we need to step and rise above all of those things, those either ors, because the sweetness is in those gray areas. Because if we learn, again, as I always say, stop taking life so personally. Like if it rains, I don't decide, well, the skies are against me today. It's just raining. And,
Sure.
so if we could just have that perspective on other things, we don't have to always be in that mental busyness that we have
Sure.
to either conquer something or beat something to feel better about ourselves.
Sure.
And I love that you're saying, I can't post enough about stop looking for happiness outside of you, because anybody I know, and I know people on every strata of an economic scale. I know people that are very wealthy. I know people who have nothing. They all are complaining. It doesn't matter. More money, more problems. You've still got problems. And if people can just understand these tools that you're sharing and offering, that you have to see yourself as the observer of this infinite experience that is just this ride that we're on, so that we can just actually expand our souls and be more powerful co-creators. I think there's so much value in all that you're sharing.
Yeah, thank you, India. Yeah, I mean, it's the same thing. I know you guys are in the US, I'm in Europe, and we're experiencing the same thing over here. Many people are very unhappy with austerity and all the various problems we have right now. And it's real, it's very real. I've seen Europe change a lot in the last 30 years. I'm sure you've seen the US change a lot too.
Right.
And one of the things that concerns me within all of this is the fact that we're not really bringing in more awareness to actually deal with the problems. And I see the same things happening year after year. And the thing which frustrates me is if only we could bring more awareness in, we would then be able to solve the problems. But this is still a concept which is, I don't know, apparently hard for people to understand. I think we've unfolded an age of information where we actually believe that information is knowledge, and that knowledge is going to somehow help us, when actually information is not knowledge. We don't know what we read, in a book or somewhere. We know what we experience.
Key.
So we have like a proliferation of knowledge in all spheres, not just in the spiritual or religious or new age, not just socially or economically or geopolitically, but everywhere there's so much information. And what we actually need is real knowledge. And that knowledge is based on awareness. And so I would encourage people within this crisis to see it as an opportunity and to cultivate awareness in whichever way. It doesn't have to be with the schools of awareness. Anybody can simply cultivate awareness by being still, centering themselves, and just focusing on the breathing. And you'll find that within 5 minutes you create greater awareness and clarity. And then things can be understood much more simply. The real problem we're facing today is confusion. The circumstances of financial or, whatever, but the real essence of it is confusion. And so the real remedy is clarity and awareness.
Cheers to that.
Absolutely. Now, I see you use the term, the Akasha, in your site a few times. Give us and the listeners a bit of what your understanding is of that term. What does it mean for you? What is the Akasha?
Okay. Well, that's another great question, India. Thank you. So it's also an interesting question to talk about, because there are different understandings of Akasha, or space, in the Western traditions and in the Eastern traditions, to name just two. The Western and the Eastern traditions have a history of using various elemental substances like air, water, earth, fire, and Akasha, as well as other elements. And so I'll talk about it with a reference to both of these traditions. So basically, the Akasha is space. So when we look out into space beyond the air of this planetary atmosphere, we're looking at Akasha. Now, we understand this space to be primarily empty, so it's a void. And within that, we can see suns and stars and planets and various astral entities up there. The space element pervades everything. It pervades the air element, it pervades the fire element, the water element, the earth element, in our physical bodies and in our earth, as much as it pervades them in space. It's a quality of material which is super subtle, and it has its own consciousness. It's essentially a causal energy field. We call it the human causal body. And within this space, the magnetic fluid is contained at a more subtle frequency. And the Buddhic energy, which is the effulgence of the magnetic fluid, radiates into space. And so in space en masse, we see this, and within our own space, in our personal solar systems, we see this as well. Now, the reason that we talk about this in the School of Awareness is because all of the dualities we experience in our personality inevitably involve the lower elements. So the etheric, astral, or emotional and mental bodies, and the things we call the ego primarily, the conflicts we have, the stress we have, is an ego-based phenomena. Now, at a more causal level, the space element within us underpins and allows to create these things. And it's also the space element which can dissolve these things, because it's so intimately connected with the Buddhi, with the magnetic fluid, which are the first levels of non-dual energy. So within the air element, you have dualities possible. Within the fire element or the emotional element, you have dualities possible. Within the space element, you're getting closer to being able to collapse them into a non-dual state. So in the Schools of Awareness, we talk a lot about Akasha, or space, as well as Buddhi, because the ability to, for example, breathe in conflicts or fear-based conflict situations deeper inside one's soul, into the non-dual field, means that we're dissolving them in space, or in Akasha. So the Akasha is talked about in the Western Hermetic tradition a lot, and various initiations in that tradition, which involve the mastery of the elemental substance of our bodies, of our 7 bodies, as well as in the Vedic traditions, involve using the space element. So it's really where our power sits as human beings to transform.
Absolutely. Now, I would like to, we've got a lot of tools and things that you offer on the site, and I know as a life coach, and Cami also functions as a life coach, and we have oftentimes come across people who are so stuck and stagnated in an emotional place. It could be based from, past life trauma, unresolved emotional things that we're holding on to, whatever sort of a thing. But people are literally stymied in their tracks. They can't seem to move forward. And I find it really important, as you're saying, to recognize, remember, and keep very at the forefront of our minds that we are more than just a physical vessel. We have, the physical body, the causal body, emotional body, behave, all of these things. So talk to me a little bit about resolving stress and conflict, not by just purchasing a new handbag because you're happy right now. What are the different layers that we have to attend to? Because if we do something that makes us feel better in the moment, that next layer, that next body is just going to fall down on top of us again, and we're back in that same place. And we see that so often. Give us a little bit about what you have come to in dealing with this sort of situation.
Sure. I mean, another good question. I mean, I'm a realist fundamentally, and I think that it's good to give people the best advice you can. But I think it's always going to be necessary that people have some palliative or symptomatic remedy that just keeps them afloat and balanced whilst Absolutely. They're looking for something better. However, I do endorse choosing remedies which are fundamentally causal. And so what I've experienced in, 30 years of working as a therapist or a counselor, whatever you want to call it, as well as working on my own process and, sharing a lot of space like that with friends, is that the more integral and the more causal the, therapy or practice that we're engaging with, the more chance of actually and fundamentally resolving an issue. So what I mean by that is, for example, if we're trying to resolve stress or some trauma from the childhood and we don't really ever consider why it happened, but we just feel the pain and try and change the pain, then there's a tendency for it to come back in a cycle, because what's happening at a causal level is our souls have chosen to allow us to have these particular experiences so that we can learn and grow as spiritual beings. And when we avoid that through unconsciousness and try and just change the pain, which is natural, of course, we tend to just get trapped in these cycles where they repeat themselves, and we say, okay, this therapy didn't work, and I tried that, and so on. And so in the School of Love Awareness, what we do is we teach various practices which fundamentally help a person to become aware of their life energy or their soul within themselves, and then relate that innermost beingness and causality, so their causal body and its life energy and its consciousness, to the trauma that they've experienced, or to the stress that they're experiencing, or to the conflict, or whatever the issue is, and then really understand it causally. And in so doing, it tends to heal it permanently. It's a bit like a child, when it cuts its knee, it cries because it thinks it's going to die when it's 5 years old and it's cut its knee, It's terrible. But when you're an adult, when you're 20, you can cut your knee real bad, and you're not going to cry because it doesn't really mean anything. It's the same thing with any kind of pain, any kind of trauma. Once we fundamentally understand why that thing happened, then it's much easier then to let go of it and actually heal it. If we have the strongest energy healing modalities, they can be fantastic and they are necessary. But if we have that without the causal understanding, these cycles tend to unfold again and again. And so you have people trapped in therapy as much as they're trapped in trauma. And, it's not such a good thing.
Absolutely. Now, you give reference, you've got a question on your site, and you answer it beautifully, and I just want to give you an opportunity to answer it on air. And we're talking about the tools and these practical uses that we can have. And it says, the School of Love Academy uses a synthesis of practices which work from the causal to the symptomatic levels and unfold a psychology of love. Why is that, and what does it mean?
Well, basically what I'm trying to explain today in Toto is that the greater the integral structure that we can unfold as human beings with 7 bodies, the greater the psychology of love and the love awareness and the humanity that we'll achieve. And so the issues we choose to see as problems very often are actually a beautiful invitation to create that kind of yet more beautiful human, transpersonal, integral substantiality. And so the entire School of Awareness is a series of practices or a syllabus which runs across different levels. So a person could choose to engage with it, first of all, to resolve their issues with stress or conflict or personal trauma, and then potentially end up using the practices to gain a full realization of their spiritual essence, and then fuse that spiritual essence with the different bodies of their ego. So they would create a soul-infused personality. But a soul-infused personality with the 3 innate qualities of the soul: will, love, and intelligence. And that would unfold through using the problems as the very food for the solution, rather like Shakti using Soma. So the Shakti burns up the ignorance, and all that's left is Shakti. This has always been the case, and we see this every day with the renewal of nature by the solar energy in space. So the idea that this electromagnetic energy we know as the sun sits in what we call space, or the Akasha, and constantly renews the elements of nature is a sign to us that we can do the very same thing. And so again, our problems are a wonderful opportunity for spiritual growth.
Absolutely, and that like I am tingling again. I love talking to you. I'm gonna tell you, I have had clients, friends, associates, and I'm sure Cammie has as well. Because I giggle to myself sometimes when people have gone through, a course of sessions and they've come through something, and they somehow think that, well, if I just get this life coaching, or if I just take this class, or if I just have this healing session or whatever, that all of a sudden your life experiences, everything that you perceived at one point as negative, they're going to go away. But I firmly believe the opposite. Your life is not going to change. What's going to change is how you respond to these external things. And I feel like, yes, you may still have, somebody might ding your car in a parking lot, just as they did before you took your quote-unquote training. However, this time, instead of reacting in anger or being violent or terribly upset, maybe this time, instead of being the student, maybe you have now the opportunity to be the teacher. And maybe those people that are experiencing or witnessing you go through this will be like, wow, I love how he or she handled that. That's a great mentor for me. What do you think about that?
Well, I think that we're all at different levels, and that's cool. It's natural, it's perfect, and teachers emerge, and teachers of different subjects, and it's perfect how it is. We all have to find the best teaching for us. There's a lot of good stuff out there. There is a lot of misinformation in every sphere, not just with this kind of thing. That's just part of the environment we live in this age of mankind that we're at right now. To talk about a meta-historical perspective, we could see, for example, that mankind is learning to deal with the lower mental body. We're very confused very easily about information and perception and conflict and very many things. And this is obvious if we would stand outside the broader social context and look at it with some honesty. And so, en masse, we're learning how to use the mind. And it's going to be messy, and there's going to be confusion. And I think there are many good teachers, and we all do what we can, and we all do our best. My own personal philosophy is to try and keep things simple because of the confusion, and focus on the idea that awareness is the vehicle for education. The more aware you are, the more you can learn. The higher quality your perception is, and the higher quality your understanding and education is, the less awareness, the less you can learn. If you're in a coma, you can't learn anything. If you're living in the best life situation possible, then you have the potential of learning to a very high standard. So awareness is absolutely the integral element to education. And on a planet where confusion is the generic lesson we're all experiencing, awareness is the generic thing that we're called to unfold. So the School of Love Awareness really tries to keep it very simple and offer practical tools to do that.
I think you touched on another really important point, is that when it's simple, it's actually easy to implement as well. I think a lot of the reason why people are finding it so difficult to put into practice the things that they're learning is because it's been made too convoluted. It really doesn't have to be that complicated, and the simple path is going to be the one that actually gets people where they're trying to go. So I love that you've sort of integrated all of these concepts into one beautiful creation.
Yeah, and easily embraceable, because I know, like I said, I find a lot of people who want somebody to do it for them. And I really haven't found that person yet that can fix you.
Well, and that's because it feels hard to them. And when you make it feel easy, they don't react that way anymore.
Well, I think a lot of it as well is, I think you're both raising very good points, and I totally agree with what you're saying. I think it's natural, for us as human beings who are dealing with modern life, which can be, hard to deal with, and we only have so much energy and time. We're busy, we're stressed, etc. You want to have a spiritual practice that feels good, that's actually going to achieve some results for you. And sure, this is hard to find because there's so much information out there. And so coming back to the philosophy of the School of Awareness on this, one of the things that we try and do is empower people to actually have their own spiritual experiences. So what I mean is we don't want to stay...
Drew, are you still there?
He's going to come back.
And the utility of that... So can you hear me?
Yeah,
yes, you popped off for like 2 sentences.
Yeah, the last 5 seconds of whatever you sort of went out.
So what we're trying to do is help people to achieve a realization of their own souls and its awareness, so they actually have that knowledge and we don't need to support them. So they're then independent, they can take that into their lives and help their friends, okay? And one of the things that we try and do with that is give them a knowledge of the different elemental substance of their bodies of consciousness, okay? Are you hearing me?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
You for sure. Okay. I love what you're saying. It's all about empowering the person to drive their soul.
Sure, yeah, it's actual knowledge that we're trying to help people to get, rather than just information, And so the thing is, like, how good is your knowledge? Do you really have the realization of that body of consciousness? Do you really have an ability to use that? Or is it just 10 books that you read and, some stuff that you're interested in as information, which is cool, and it's interesting. We have to start somewhere. But knowledge is power. And I think that's a very important concept.
What you're talking about is a permanent solution, because when you get people connected back, tapped back into their soul self, their avatar self, they don't run out of tools. They don't outgrow the tools that they've been given, because their evolution is directly connected to where they're at all times. I mean, your soul cannot be fooled. It cannot be dissuaded. When you're tapped into it and you're in flow, the solutions come before the problems. I mean, everything, the people, the resources, the whatever you need will just magically appear in synchronistic form. Totally. And so what you're talking about is so important for people to understand. It's like it's not you against the world. It's not you against the system trying to figure it all out. You just have to tap into that inner spark, and the rest will be sorted out literally like magic for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm a big advocate of not becoming trapped in these dualities that are mediated to us, as you said at the start of the show, and actually giving people very simple tools. So, a couple of the basic meditations we have at the School of Love Awareness allow a person to become aware of their soul so they can contact it on a regular basis. And then, having unfolded this, they can then take their questions and their concerns directly to their own soul and experience the greater perception that you're talking about, Cami, and the realization of that causality into their lives, rather than having their information driven through external sources of inference, whether it be media or social groups, et cetera, et cetera.
Yes, because until you do that, you're constantly going to be needing the next book, this next self-help
it's like
development
system. Exactly.
because you're going to outgrow the last one. So
Sure.
What you're talking about is a fundamental key to becoming not only your own teacher, but to actually becoming a change agent in others' lives, which is ultimately what we're all here to do, is to help others, help ourselves first master this game, this creatrix, as you put it. I love that word, by the way. I'm kind of quantum grammar crackhead. I've never heard that before. I love it. But, first we're here to master ourselves. That is our highest destiny, to awaken to who we really, truly are inside, to reconnect to our eternal essence. And then once we do that, help others do the same. So,
totally.
I'm falling in love with you right now.
Thank you.
Beautiful thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to hear you say those things. For example, I ran a project on Indiegogo last year, which was all about celebrating mankind as the fundamental biotechnology, or the most supreme, technology, which is biological. And, it's based on the idea that we are this spiritual electromagnetic entity at our core, which is the human being. And we have various elemental bodies. And, we can create, we've been given an ego to do that as a creator, which allows us to actually focus energy on different levels. And, it's a fundamental opportunity anyway to grow spiritually, but within the crisis that we're in, we have this accelerated context where the only solutions we probably will create are through our creativity. And so if we can use integral practices to expand that, the potential for creating a better, more humane world is an amazing, opportunity right now.
Yes. Absolutely. Yeah. Now, before we get to the first break, I want to have one more question before we get there. Now, we hear the term sexual healing, and a lot of people, at least in the United States, think it's just a really clever, good R&B song from Marvin Gaye. But talk to me about what is this term metatantra, and what are the benefits of social sexual healing? Is that possible? And please clarify, that doesn't mean like, okay, it's on now, let me get out the black book and heal myself. What does it mean?
Well, that's all good as well. And, we're human beings and we all come into the world through sex. The universe is sex. It's a spiritual being which penetrates matter on diverse levels and creates consciousness, which is orgasmic, So sex is God and, sex is the universe and society is sex. And all of the practices that I teach obviously can be used for sex in that basic sense. But they're actually created as what I call spiritual tantras to resolve particular problems. So Violet Diamond Tantra, which exists on different levels of practice, is a wisdom practice which gives us an awareness of the duality and its fundamental traps and illusions, and allows us to collapse that into non-dual bliss, and also to go from that non-dual bliss back into duality and create. Okay? So Meta-Tantra is slightly different. Meta-Tantra is about healing relationships on a social level, whether they're intimate relationships with just one person or whether they're broader relationships, groups or group to group, not in a sexual sense per se, but in a social sense. So in Meta-Tantra, the basic concept is that the sexual vitality is a very powerful force. And if we can somehow harness this and sublimate it and, clarify it to a certain extent, and then bring it into relationship with compassion from the heart, okay, we can empower that compassion and we can really energize our relationships with compassion and with sexual ecstasy as well, okay? And if then we take that empowered compassion with sexual ecstasy and then cycle it back round into the sexual vitality, we can catalyze that even more. And so then we can bring that greater catalyzation back to the compassion of the heart and empower more, ecstatic friendliness and so on and so forth. So it's like a self-feeding, self-perpetuating cycle
It's completing a circuit of Kundalini. That's energy, and energy wants to connect to more energy. And I know a lot of people think the ancients were all stuffy and pent up, but if you go back and study like ancient Egyptian, ancient Sumeria, like they were very well in touch with these things that you're saying, and the Ankh that we see is very important in completing that energetic circuit. And I love that you put in the piece about compassion, because that's the difference between just being promiscuous and putting notches on the wall. And making real connections.
That's the sacred component that's being perverted right now. I've actually never heard anybody identify it in that way, but you're talking about the toroidal loop, the free energy loop, that runs the universe is within us as well, and tapping into that sexual energy is one of the easiest ways. They used it to manifest in the ancient world as well, actually. It was a creation tool.
Absolutely.
Yeah, just let me comment on that before we go to the break, if I can.
Absolutely,
So, it's interesting to hear you respond to that. And indeed, Violet Diamond Tantra, Metta Tantra, the School of Love Awareness, does have synergies with Kemetic Tantra and Hermetic Tantra, and also Pleiadian Tantra too. And it's very much based on spiritual practices. So this is why I call it a spiritual Tantra, even though it can be used for, sex and so on, which is, of course, good, right? We all enjoy sex.
Absolutely.
And, there are good reasons why. So the spiritual practices are a fundamental part of it, though. And so there is a distinction between just sexual practices in what we would classify as neo-tantra, or, particular cultural practices that we would see in kind of Vedantic tantras or Buddhist tantras, etc., etc. So in a sense, it's a new system of spiritual tantra. There are resonances with some other systems, but it doesn't really see itself at odds with anything like neo-tantra. All of these things are necessary, but it's really about using the sexual energy and the Kundalini in a safe way. So by having a psychology of love connected to sexual vitality, we're unfolding pathways of energy in the psyche and in the human bodies, which are going to lead, fragments of Kundalini or gradually allow Kundalini to awaken and empower that in a safe way and in a human way. So we're not going to try and awaken just power for the sake of it. We're going to try and awaken power to empower love. Okay,
absolutely.
So it's a path of sacred humanity.
We might have to bring you back. Cami and I do a series periodically called, we have a group on Facebook called Celebrating the Divine Feminine and Masculine Energies.
Cool.
And so we might bring you back just to do a whole hour or so on the tantras and the different types, because like I said, it's so important. Everything is so irresponsible and everything is recreation.
Well, there's a lot of confusion right now in Tantra, and there's a lot of confusion in many areas as well. So I don't see it's just unique to Tantra. But I think that the good thing about all of the engagement with Tantra right now is that we're all learning and we're all unfolding this kind of unconscious pursuit of what is Tantra. And so I think it's all good as long as it doesn't get too extreme, but that's true for anything, right?
Absolutely. And I find it so odd that I have a lot of people I know in India where it's supposed to be the land of Tantra, but they're not even meant to talk about it. And even the Tantrikas and those who are the teachers of these most ancient practices, they have to do it in secret. And so I think it's time we just blow the lid off and bring humanity back to itself.
Sure, yeah, absolutely. I mean, the trouble with, or the issue with talking about a global context is, we're going to talk about the divergence between cultures like, the culture you have in California or that we have in Europe compared to different other cultures in the Middle East and the Far East, etc.
Right.
And so those other cultures might be experiencing sociological issues like they have right now in India with, society and sexuality, etc., which preclude the popularity of Tantra. And also Tantra has always been kind of a difficult subject because it fundamentally deals with power. Yes. And power is always a very contentious subject and a very misunderstood subject. And this is one of the other reasons why in the School of Love Awareness we've tried to relate power to humanity, such that we unfold an empowered humanity through Tantra.
Absolutely. And I think it's important, again, when any subject is notably subjugated, suppressed, there's a reason behind it, because anyone who's done any study into these secret societies and this sort of, the shady side of what's going on now, you'll see that they implement the use of sexual energy along with different moon phases and different celestial and cosmic events to amplify this energy, because they realize and they know the innate power that we hold as individuals, and that the sexual power of these rituals is far, far beyond anything they want us to embrace.
Sure, yeah. I mean, there's power in sex, there's power in electromagnetic energy, and we see this in the universe. I don't doubt that there are groups who, employ these practices for specific agendas. But the point that I would, mention on that subject is that there always have been groups, there always have been conspiracies, and there probably always will be. Indeed, the universe is a conspiracy itself. It conspires to educate us and teach us. And one of the concerns that I have with the whole unfoldment of this duality of the establishment versus us is, beyond the inherent trap of that duality, what if there is a revolution, or what if there is an evolution? Will we fundamentally understand, and will we actually improve our human nature to a higher degree than the people who are running the show now? Yeah. That's one of the concerns that I have, and one of the things that I see here in Europe, And so that's why I'm going to try and keep things simple and just focus it on education and expanding awareness.
And that, sure, people like you are why the answer to that question is yes.
It absolutely is. And just like the infinity symbol itself, that is the inner way that energy flows. Yes, it may seem to be going in one direction, but it always, always corrects itself, even if we do nothing. Sure. Evolution is going to carry on. Let's take a break, you guys, for about 4 minutes, and let's go all along the watchtower, a little bit of Jimi Hendrix for a break. Go and refresh your teas and make a pit stop. Do what you need to do, but meet us back here in 4 minutes while we carry on with Drew Sinot from the School of Love Academy on Expanding Radio. Welcome, welcome, welcome back to the second hour of the synchronicity of the 21st century superhuman. We are getting a grasp on how to live a quantum lifestyle. This is India Irie and Cami B on Expanding Radio with our beautiful guest, Drew Sinot of the School of Love Awareness. Are we back, everybody?
Yeah.
Absolutely brilliant. Cami, are you there?
Yeah, sorry, I was muted.
Quit doing that. Now, Drew, I'm really curious. On your website, you talk about something called multi-field stones. Tell us a little bit about what that is, what they do.
Okay. Well, yeah, that's a really interesting question, and it's kind of probably the most difficult one to answer in the scope of a radio show. Multi-field stones are essentially energetic sculptures, which, in a sense, you could say are similar to orgonite. But they're different to orgonite as well. The stones contain certain materials which have been impressed with fields of energy and certain rates or frequencies of energy, certain signatures of energy, which are positive. And they've had other frequencies or rates of energy turned down and balanced out or eliminated. So the multi-field stones basically are environmental purifiers. They purify the environment from electrosmog, negative energies, conflict, stress, unconsciousness, etc., etc. And at the same time, they seek to support biological energy fields, human beings, animals, to create states of awareness, etc. And the stones range from very small, fairly simple objects right up into what we call the School of Love Awareness stone. And the School of Love Awareness multi-field stone it's an educational device in the sense that it's been impressed with frequencies and states of consciousness which the School of Love Awareness works with and seeks to unfold the realization of in its practices within the stone as a resonator. So if a person buys one of these stones, then they have a stone similar to a crystal, and it does contain crystal powder and various elements which resonate like a teacher. So this is why we call these teaching stones. But essentially, they're similar to orgonite, but they're existing on 7 levels of consciousness, and they're fundamentally engineered with different psychic and spiritual technologies and also physical state technologies, which create their warp fields.
I love that, and I didn't know that there was such a technology. I mean, I'm really aware with the power of crystals and their sentience and their importance, but I hadn't realized that there was such a thing.
Well, sure. I mean, essentially we.
He cut out. What he's describing is the light mandala. He's just
we can create,
you're back. Okay.
State of consciousness. Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, you disappeared for a second, so we missed everything.
Stop leaving your body. Stay with us just for another 53 minutes.
Okay, so it's an interesting question, because in the School of Love Awareness, the practices actually work because of the science of physics and consciousness and energy. And so I can explain this by, the simile of a battery. So with a wet cell battery, we have a fluid, and into that fluid we place a physical charge, electricity from the life field, and it electrolyzes the fluid and contains a charge in the battery, in its fluid, which can emit a current. Okay. Now the human being's the same, because we're essentially around 80% fluid. Okay. And we have a mental body which can think thoughts and, guide energy. And so we can create our state of mind in this biological battery, which we are. The work of the Japanese water crystal scientists proved this, several decades ago, of course. And so many of the practices in the School of Awareness are using that science, so that they're based in rigorous, congruent, empirical research, as well as, spiritual science. And the multi-field stones essentially are the same thing. They work in a very, very similar way. So it's about expanding the awareness in the stone onto different levels and drawing in energy from different fields of consciousness and condensing it into the materials and the fields contained within the stone. So, I don't know whether there are other things like this that exist. I imagine there probably are. I've never seen them. This was really something that I kind of unfolded over the years from working with things like orgonite, radionics, and so on and so forth. And it seemed like a good idea because, you can purify the environment that you live in. And because many of us live in urban spaces where we're dealing with high levels of electromagnetic radiation from cell phone towers and, other environmental pollutions, it's kind of a needed technology,
Absolutely. What he's describing is the light mandala, India. As I'm listening to him, you just totally downloaded Pleiadian technology, whether you're aware of it or not, and it may have come through research and, just connecting the dots intuitively, but one of our projects has an actual piece of hardware technology that does what you're talking about, and it's not readily available to the public quite yet. But it will be in the future, and it programs crystals with frequencies. It programs the electromagnetic system, the body, with frequencies to help correct and heal everything from emotions to, physical dis-ease.
As well as clearing the air, like you mentioned.
Yeah, I mean, it'll even teach you how to speak another language, because literally everything is a frequency. So what you've done is you've tapped into a technology and created your own version of it that will eventually become available to the entire planet. You're just ahead of the curve, and I love that.
Hey.
Yeah, I'm sure this kind of thing will become more popular over the years, It was really just developed out of a passion of mine, because I studied art, I studied sculpture and painting before I studied education and philosophy.
Well,
I've always been making stuff as I travel around,
Your starseed quality is evident. I mean, you're tapped
off the charts.
Yeah.
We're so happy to have you incarnate here at the
Pleiadian family is showing you right now.
Nice to be here.
I want to go to a topic that is just, I love to talk about it. It's meditation. And I know, I can tell you, me personally, the standard, or what people often prescribe as meditation, or, people suggest, the sitting lotus style in the quiet and dark, that my mind gets busier in those times. I tend to be a person who, if I'm spending time in nature, walking through the forest, sitting with animals, that's when I get into that zone of no time, no space, nothing matters. I'm just part of everything around me. Tell me about your take on meditation. And I see that you said that there's 3 components or 3 sections. Talk to me about what meditation and how to meditate from your experience.
Sure. Okay. So, meditation is a bit like driving a car, Once you've learned to drive, you can drive any car. So...
Oh, you've left again. Come back to your body.
Doing those meditations, okay?
Okay. Yes.
And so one of the things... Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, now we can. You keep leaving, yes.
Okay, so...
you said you left off the very first mention of the word meditation.
Okay, so meditation is a science which can be divided into 3 levels. And if we can understand how the science works and gain some ability to focus, then we can apply our ability to any kind of meditation we'd like to do, okay? But without actually having the ability to focus, it's difficult to do any meditation. Do you follow me?
Yes.
Hello?
Yes, I do.
Yes.
I do.
Okay, so basically the science of meditation is probably best talked about in Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, which are readily available. It's an ancient Indian text from 2,500 years ago by a sage called Patanjali. I believe you can buy this on Amazon.com for $10. Basically, Patanjali talks about meditation being a science which divides itself into 3 stages, which each follow congruently upon the other. And it really is a lack of understanding of this science that causes people to say things like, well, I've been meditating for like 30 years or 40 years and I like it, but I don't really get much from it, And sadly, we see so many people who just get into a relaxed state, but they never really achieve anything. In fact, they often ruin their posture, as you say, So the idea is that meditation is a question of willpower, primarily, not relaxation. So the first stage of meditation is called concentration. And what we need to do in that first stage is we need to have a practice which is scientific, within which we can actually concentrate concentrate our energies. So concentrate the energy of our senses and our energy field at one point. Now, if we can actually achieve concentration, which is essentially an act of will, then what happens is we can slip inside the concentration to a deeper level, and this is actually called meditation. So when I penetrate the object that I'm concentrating on, I'm then meditating on it. When I'm still focusing on it to try and penetrate into it, then I'm concentrating. That's an act of will. When I penetrate it, I'm meditating with it. I've become one with it, okay? And then when I dissolve myself in that oneness and I know that object intimately, then I'm in contemplation, or what we call samadhi, which is qualified by a state of ecstasy. And this is really love, So the science of meditation is really the science of knowledge through love, okay? It's a pedagogic, ontological, epistemological practice as much as a spiritual practice. Sure. And anybody that can understand this can gain direct knowledge of any object by becoming one with it in love, okay? Where nothing is hidden, as opposed to viewing it from the outside and just seeing the surface, or having information inferred from another third party about the surface. That's not knowledge at all, whether through love or otherwise. That's just inference and often confusion, okay? So meditation is a science, and it's integral to education. And I can probably just, finish by paralleling it with love in the human sense to, try and explain it as clearly as possible. So imagine if you have a person who falls in love for the first time, and they're somewhere, they're in a bar, they're in a library, or on a bus, and they see somebody they're attracted to. What happens is all of their senses are attracted magnetically to that other person, and there's an act of will which compels them to focus their sense of smell, their sense of sight, their sense of imagined touch, and their sense of hearing, etc., on that object, okay? And then they pursue this and using their will, and they get some intimacy with the object by going to talk to the person and arranging to meet later, okay? So love at the very first level of attraction, in a personal sense, is like concentration, okay, in meditation. And then let's say those two people unfold a relationship, and so they become intimate and they gain knowledge of each other, which is on a deeper level through that intimacy. And they really do come to know each other, and they share that space where they've become one. However, there's still a distinction between them and the other person, okay? But yet the knowledge is good, it's intimate and it's good. And this is like people who have been in a relationship for a number of years, let's say. Mm-hmm. And then when you have the deepest level of knowledge, called samadhi, or contemplation, which is the fruit of meditation, this can be paralleled with, say, a couple have been happily married for their entire life, or just been together their entire life, and their whole distinction of me and you has dissolved. There's just one entity, you know, and they know each other perfectly. They think the same thoughts, their hearts beat to the same pulse, and so on. You know, you see these people sometimes on benches, and you can't tell, is it one person or is it two people? Okay, that kind of total synergy, that complete, perfect intimacy, where they understand each other without any questions remaining. That's samadhi, that's contemplation, and that's knowledge through love. And that's the kind of knowledge that we're talking about in the School of Love Awareness. Not information from a separated sense, but real knowledge that empowers real people. So if we learn how to meditate properly, if we take the time to do this and study the science of it, which, you know, only takes a few weeks to really understand, then every meditation and every practice, whatever it is, we unfold upon that science is going to be a lot more effective than if we just, you know, presume that meditation is relaxing and we learn 100 meditations over 10 years.
I love your
but with no concentration, you know?
Yeah.
Thanks.
That's good stuff. It makes so much sense. Again, you know how I am. I've told you about I don't like boxes, and people keep saying, well, no, it's not meditation if you do it that way. And I'm like, but who said? Like, why does that have to be so? Because it's so for you. So I absolutely love that your explanation and your understanding or your inner standing just involves that connection, that being one with all that is, because that's where we need to get back to, because we've gotten so far and so disconnected. So I think that's so very important.
Thank you. But it's about, you know, just having the minimal structure, which is true, which can then facilitate us to be creative, you know. So it's like it's a tiny box, but it's a good box because it does a lot for you, you know.
Absolutely. Now, as I go down through the list of all of the wonderful seminars that you offer, that just absolutely whets my appetite to be more interested in taking one of them and partaking in one of them. So I want to share with the listeners who, some people are too lazy to click. I want to share with the listeners some of these different seminars and these opportunities to expand and to educate ourselves that you offer. So we're going to just go down a list, and I want you to kind of give us a little bit about what the seminar or the retreat is about, and sort of what to expect. What are the things that you will touch upon if someone were to partake in this opportunity? So first, we've got the Violet Diamond Tantra and Metta Tantra seminar. Tell us a little bit about what that offers and what is included in that journey.
Okay, well, you know, basically the seminars are a fairly generic structure that many people are familiar with these days. So they're around 5 or 6 days long, and they happen at you know, eco villages or retreat centers in nature. And you know, it's the people are there full time for 5 to 7 days. So it's including vegetarian food, generally sharing a room with somebody else, and we're doing practices from dusk till dawn, but not, you know, with some kind of stupid intensity, but it's very much about being on a retreat where we can practice the practices and where we can ask questions and understand and co-unfold a space of mutual sharing about these subjects and everything that's connected to them. So, for example, with Metta Tantra and the Violet Diamond Tantra seminars, these seminars are not explicitly sexual. So we're not doing things like Neo-Tantra, we're not doing massage, we're not really you know, having couples practices and things like that. And that's all well and good, but it's just not what I'm teaching. Inevitably, people will share intimate space, but that's kind of outside the structure of the seminar, okay? So the tantric practices themselves are not sexually intimate. There isn't any nudity. It's very easy for a novice or somebody who hasn't meditated before to take part
Darn.
with these.
No, I'm just kidding. Carry on. Gone away again. Oh, there you are.
Can you hear me?
Now I
Hello?
can. You're back now.
Okay. It's basically designed to teach the person to become aware of their sexuality, their sexual energy, their desire, their frustration, and to gain a mastery of it through awareness. Okay?
Absolutely.
Gotcha.
Okay. And so it's designed to give the person a mastery of their sexual energy and sexuality and desire and so on through awareness, that we practice in the seminars, and we'll do group work as well, and people will do things in groups of 2 and 3, and they'll share that kind of space too. But it's really just to get them to experience a new quality of consciousness that then they can take back into their lives. So
and
the seminars are like
to
training
note
opportunities.
Also that it's a 7-day seminar. It's not just an hour or 1 day sort of adventure. This is really intense. So it's got 7 days here of activities. Yeah. Okay, lovely.
Yeah, sure. It's intense, but it's comfortable as well. I mean, people have time to themselves to spend by themselves in nature or wherever, or to share with people they meet on the seminar. And it's generally only around 20. It's a safe space, and it's designed to be joyful and loving. And it's intense, but it's very comfortable. And it's yeah.
Okay, so now I also see that you have listed available some help and some tools for causal conflict resolution. So you've put that together in a love awareness seminar. What are some of the sorts of things that we'll be able to gain from participating in this one?
Okay, well, it's similar to the Violet Diamond Tantra and Metta Tantra seminar in the sense that it's expanding consciousness and resolving certain core issues of ignorance and duality and confusion and fear. And so where the Violet Diamond Tantra and Metta Tantra seminars are really unfolding a wisdom and an awareness of how our egos are unconsciously motivated to engage with things we're confused about and therefore get frustrated about. The conflict resolution seminar is more about bringing an awareness to the underpins our relationships, and that fear is a lack of awareness of our true power. And bringing in a realization of that true power into that place, transforming the fear into an awareness of power, and then actually sharing quite a lot of space with the other people on the seminar, where we basically unfold structures of, loving into beingness. Okay, so I could divide it into 2 parts to explain it. So the first part would be to, and there are many things in the seminar, but this is a kind of a 2-part equation which exists through all of the conflict resolution practices. So the first part is to gain that awareness of one's own soul and the non-dual life field which pervades the soul and pervades the universe, which is complete power. And the second part of the equation is to then do practices with the other participants, so in groups of 2 and 3, etc., where we actually then exchange that love as power with the others. So a very simple practice that we do is, having become aware of our own souls, we then connect with the other person and stay aware of our own soul power, but become aware of the other person and their soul, and then do a breathing exercise where we're breathing in and out of each other. So as the other person breathes out, the other practitioner would then breathe that person's energy deep within themselves, through the ego, through the fear, through all of the boundaries they would normally have, deep into that non-dual field of life energy within themselves, which is power and love, and experience it combusting into a co-mutual loving space, and then breathe out from that space through their personality to the other person while the other person breathes them in, and so achieve this symbiosis and synergy of soul loving through the personality, and gradually washing away the fear, and essentially teaching the person that it's a choice. They can choose to start to have relationships like that, or they can choose to continue having fear-based relationships.
I love it. Absolutely.
So that's one of the things that we do on that seminar, but there are many things, and there are many kind of fun group activities as well, where we'll get to actually share the space and share that joy with other people. So it's not just like an ashram where we're sitting doing the practice. There's kind of a nice balance between the two things.
I love that. I love that. I love that. I love it. Now, you've also got something that you call love wisdom in causal stress management. What's the difference? What kind of, if I were to be at a place where I'm trying to decide which one is for me, what's the difference between the two?
Okay, well, basically the seminar structures on the website are kind of generic structures that we base our work on, but we generally have specifications for different seminars which are then advertised via the Eventbrite web links from that page. So if there's a seminar on near you, or if you'd like to organize a seminar near you, then we can tailor-make and customize the things that we teach for particular audiences or particular groups, okay?
So are you saying that if we wanted to have a seminar local to our area, that you would send some of your people, or you would come, or do we have to do it ourselves?
Yeah, well, I would probably be there early 2015 anyway for some events, also in Canada. So we're talking about organizing some events in California and Canada in early 2015 or in spring 2015. Most of the events at the moment are happening in Europe at rural locations like retreat centers or eco-villages. So either people would fly here or I would fly to the US to do the seminar, but they can be customized as well. So to come back to your question, the love wisdom practices really just take a slightly more focused intention on
through
a fundamental pedagogy where we want to really understand why we're pursuing a certain agenda in our lives, or what that really means to us and how it resonates with our causality and what the fundamental capacity of things are, etc., etc. So it's about using pure awareness, whereas the conflict resolution is about using an awareness of love and its power. And then the synergy of those two meditations, or the complete meditation that I think you're referring to, is about using all of these practices together. So it's more intense, and it's involved with gaining a realization of the soul's power, love, and intelligence as a synthetic triad, and fusing that synthetic triad with the bodies of the personality.
Oh, I'm just loving everything that you're saying. Now, there is a line in the seminar that talks about the love psychology of causal stress and conflict management that says there's an activity called meeting your subconscious conflict archetype, finding out who they are and understanding that. What is a subconscious conflict archetype? Archetypes are really something that's a passion of mine to study, but share with the audience what an understanding or understanding of that is.
Okay, well, basically there are many concepts of time and space, of course, and a very simple division is subconscious, conscious, and superconscious, or past, present, and future. Now, if we think about consciousness like a sea, and we imagine that, waves upon that sea travel through time and space, and whilst that wave itself might break in present time on a shore somewhere, it basically is part of a sea which has existed in the past, in a part of time and space in the past. And so when we talk about subconscious conflict archetypes or subconscious stress archetypes, what we're talking about is the compounded experiences and impressions within the causal body of a human, or within the collective consciousness of humanity, where we've all experienced conflict and stress and ignorance and fear. And these very subtle impressions from circumstances have created samskaras in the akasha, in our causal bodies, and we continue to, move and have our being from that point within ourselves, and we share that whole field of akasha or group soul with humanity as well. So, for example, many of the wars and conflicts we experience today are the most protracted campaigns and wars that you could imagine. These have been going on since antiquity and beyond, These have been going on right through the universe, back through Sirius, Pleiades to Lyria, and probably even before Lyria, probably even before the history of this chapter of mankind.
Mm-hmm.
And so this idea that conflict is deeply impressed within the Akasha or the causal body is something we really need to bring awareness to, and bring an awareness of transformation to, so that we can actually transform this repetitive, mimetic, posturing and fighting and so on before we actually destroy ourselves as humanity, or attract some predator who sees that we're destroying ourselves and just joins in. Do you know what I'm saying?
Cheers to that, mate.
Not too many, I call those karmic traces, and not too many people address the karmic traces that are literally imprinted and encoded in our DNA and in our epigenetics. I mean, that's a real science now that people just are completely unaware of. So I love that you've incorporated that.
Thank you. Well, I talk about this at length in the book, and the whole idea of sexual energy and linguistic science and experience with our subtle bodies of Akasha, and how that not only impresses our causal body and karma, as we call it, but it also actually encodes our DNA.
Yes.
And that basically we're trapped in kind of a matrix paradigm at the moment, where we're
you have to
trying to understand that. And so there are these massive meta perspectives which are valid, and the book contains a thorough working discussion of those. But the meditations themselves are practical, however, and basically anybody could download one of these MP3s for $10, and the meditation helps you to bring.
Every time he starts talking about his meditations and the mechanics of what he's trying to teach.
Oh, now you're back. Yeah, you popped off for a sentence. And it's all right.
When you try to go into the mechanics of your meditations and what you're teaching, you disappear for about a good 3 seconds. It's really interesting pattern I'm noticing.
Okay, so the meditation is practical. It allows the person to bring awareness to that subconscious archetype of conflict and actually transform it into an archetype of love based on power. And the subconscious stress archetype transformation is similar. It brings the same awareness, but really just with more wisdom rather than love, to the stress archetype, and enlightens it about the inherent nature and capacity of its campaigns and agendas which are causing it stress, and allows it to basically grow beyond that mimetic, repetitive causal impression.
Yes, and awareness is essentially light, and transmuting things with light and love. It really is as simple as that. If you can really identify what's going on at a core level, you just shine a light on it, and its power over you disappears.
Hello? Sure. Yeah, it's very much about bringing the light to these elements. So it's very much about bringing the light to these elements, as you say, Cami.
Yeah.
But also bringing the fundamental electromagnetic power, which is a very powerful non-dual energy source which can collapse any other dualistic field. Okay.
Yes.
So it's by getting a realization of our souls, which is electromagnetic, that we then have the power over other electromagnetic phenomena, like the samskaras in the Akashic causal body. They can be collapsed into the electromagnetic field and dissolved into a non-duality. So we can actually causally re-engineer karma by getting a spiritual realization.
Instantaneously, too, like flipping a light switch. That's what a lot of people don't realize, is that they go through all this time and process and 30 years worth of therapy and 30 years worth of meditation. Sure. And if it's taking that long, you're not doing it right.
Yeah, no, it shouldn't take that long.
It's not working.
If a person has a science that works, and they're healthy enough and they have enough energy to focus, and they have some time to do the practice, really within a few months a person can achieve profound transformations in their life, which under other circumstances, like you're saying, could take the whole lifetime, if at all.
Right.
So one thing we're trying to do with the School of Self-Awareness is really give people those kinds of tools which are really going to change their lives right now for the better.
Absolutely. And it's so honorable, because we're in a society is in such a state that they want to take a tablet to sort everything out. And they're satisfied, like Cami said, to be on tablets for 30, 40 years, and that's going to fix me. But these tools are so practical and so very simplistic and even fun that it's so much easier to take control of your life than have to worry that, oh, my meds have run out, I can't be happy until I fill them again. Like, that's mental to me. Now, you've got a teaser on here that is just whetting my appetite. It says the game of love awareness.
I want to talk
coming.
About this too.
Yes, what is that? What's coming?
Talk about using a high frequency to re-entrain. I mean, getting into that zone to learning from within the fun zone is one of the fastest ways to switch your frequency.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, what we learn through joy, we really do learn. And what we're not enjoying, we really don't learn, even if we pretend. So absolutely agree, Cami. It has to be joy. And the game of love awareness, sure, it's about joy, but what it is it's about love awareness and how love awareness exists on 7 levels in the human being. So the game itself is set on 7 levels. It's a 7-level game. And it's dealing with the kinds of experiences that we can have as human beings now in the contemporary world on those levels with a narrative, but yet bringing the inherent love, intelligence, and will of the soul into the equation so that we're actually meeting the circumstances in the game, but from the soul and with love awareness. And so it's not training us, but inviting us to consider re-experiencing or experiencing everyday circumstances, but in a different way, okay? And it's a board game, so you actually play in real time with proper physical people around a table.
Oh, wow.
So so that even
brings together. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, it's totally different to being on a computer and killing people on a computer.
Right?
It's about being with real people around the table and playing a game. And so it's designed to be very humane and tangible and engaging, but the core element is to bring more deliberation and more consciousness into these questions of, how do I want to react to this thing, okay?
There again, you're ahead of the curve. This conscious entertainment idea is something that we will be, rather than this unconscious entertainment that we've been playing with for so long now, the conscious entertainment is the future. And so I love that you've totally precipitated that whole thing with this game.
Yeah, thank you, Kenny. I mean, at the moment we have a project up on the Indiegogo crowdfunding platform where we are looking for funds to complete the research for this game and actually start producing the box sets and selling them on the website, as well as developing our meditations and producing 2 more books, and also developing a 1.5-year, 5-semester online school of consciousness studies. And we have that project up on the Indiegogo crowdfunding platform right now, which is linked to the schoolofloveawareness.com website on the tuition and courses page. And so hopefully we'll achieve the funding and actually start to merchandise these games in a few months from now.
So hopefully just hold out your arms in abundance and be ready to receive it, because it's on its way, and so it is. Give us the link to your Indiegogo campaign. I've also got it shared on Facebook and Twitter, but do give us the link, the URL, the website, so that people can find and support your Indiegogo campaign. And tell us how many days are left, because I know they're usually there's a time frame for those.
Sure, I think there's about 28 days left at the moment, and it's linked via our Facebook pages. It's linked via our website from the tuition and courses page. It's linked from our blogs, and the URL is, I think, Online School of Consciousness Studies. If you type that into the Indiegogo search term, you should find the School of Love Awareness project. And anybody who's interested in taking part with this, we have very many perks on offer at the moment. So rather than actually buying products from the website, you can contribute to the project and actually receive more products from contributing as a perk. And we're also offering free consultations and discounts on the online course when we get it properly online sometime early 2015.
Tell us about, now I want to get all of your media information in. Tell us about some of the services that you offer. You have consultations. Now outside of these classes and seminars that we've spoken about, tell us what else that you're up to, so that, maybe people who don't have a group, maybe they want to have like sessions. Tell us what you have available.
Well, we do consultations, so anybody can book a consultation to talk about any subject they want, or send an email if you are not sure that we can deal with your inquiries. We have meditations available online. We have a book, The School of Love Awareness Toward an Integral and Humane Sociology, which contains the entire thesis and vision of this project. And this is a book that I wrote over the last 30 years, and much of that time was spent traveling and teaching and studying myself. It's 376 pages of normal text without illustrations. So it's a proper textbook, which is designed to actually empower anybody to learn how to do this, and even actually how to create their own community school of love awareness, or how to transform their existing school into a school of love awareness, and all of the sustainability, communal, co-housing, environmental issues which can be a part of that project. So the book's very, very practical. Then we have the seminars, and at the moment we're lining up some seminar venues for this year in Europe and Canada and California. And there are 2 more books planned. The second book will be Violet Diamond Tantra as spiritual path, and it will talk about the fundamental capacities of that path and the kind of consciousness which it aims to support and facilitate and unfold in people. And then the third book is a novel wherein the dialogue and the narrative will involve the subjects of awakening and consciousness.
Oh, brilliant. I love what you're saying about the conscious communities, because that's another huge, huge project that, Cammie and I are working on with the visionaries, okay. And we're moving forward on creating an intentional community that will be Fantastic. A global template. So we're off wow. to Peru very, very soon.
Wow.
And as I was telling you before, when I was saying to get your project proposal together and get it to me, okay. What we're doing is creating a platform, a place of conscious living, learning, teaching, and healing, which is kind of the tagline here to Expanding You.
Nice.
And I would love to get with you. And like I said, you would be my expert to go to for the educational piece of this, because you're saying things that are absolutely just hitting me right in my heart center. And I'm just so very honored to have met you. And I know people think Facebook is a waste of time, but were it not for social media, I wouldn't have come across these beautiful, beautiful spirits like yourself that I have. And I'm just so honored to have this chance to sit with you here, because we've got stuff to do. Oh, my goodness.
Well, thank you so much, Indy. Likewise, I feel the same way, and I'm very excited about hearing about your project and unfolding some co-working possibilities together. It sounds amazing.
Definitely. It's going to happen. We just can't tell you dates and times, because everything is like every second something else is popping off, and like you said, things are occurring at the speed of thought. At one point it's like, wow, I dreamed a dream, and then I thought that would be nice, but now like things are really happening, and so it's like we have to hold on to the reins, or the whole thing gets away from us. It's just really that magnificent in this time. That's why we keep saying we're so wonderfully honored at the possibilities that are just pouring onto us. We don't even have to look for things anymore. As Cammie said, all the resources are appearing before us as long as we keep moving forward. Go ahead, love.
I think that's the key thing. I mean, like we were saying earlier on in the show, that these problems or apparent problems we're facing are really actually opportunities in disguise. And I keep up with the news, so I'm aware of what's happening over there in the US. And we have very similar things happening over here, all across Europe. And there are many interesting projects unfolding from amongst this, things which normally wouldn't have happened,
Absolutely.
So,
and I kind of see it as it's, people, again, like you talk about duality and choices, you can choose to pour your heart and your fear and all that, your brain power into the propaganda, which most of it is. Yes, there are things going on, but there's a lot of fear mongering going on. But I try to remind people that you don't have to let that be your life. Jump into the co-creative pool, and you won't have time to worry about what the mainstream is trying to, stir up in your psyche to keep you afraid and paralyzed, because there's so much going on in the way of opportunities just flying at us. You can't keep track of the amazingness.
Well, and
love it.
The irony of all that is that it is happening to you and everybody else so that you will focus on the solution. And the minute that you do focus on the solution versus the problem, it all disappears.
Absolutely, Cammie. Yeah. I think one of the key things is exactly what you're saying. It's the ability to control your point of focus and control your consciousness, and understand what's an illusion and understand what's creating life.
And it's all a game
the
that we're
possibility
playing.
of greater life.
Yep, and we designed it that way.
Absolutely.
I mean, the suffering serves a purpose. The contrast serves a purpose. It's all great fuel, and our avatars are having a whole lot of fun watching us. We're so deep in the game that we don't even realize we're playing a game. So they have to, press buttons and throw zombies at us and all of these different things to get us to wake up. And the minute that
it's working.
The minute that you realize that you're playing a game, the levity shows up like instantaneously.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting. I totally agree with you, and I think it's an interesting thing when we look at the meta perspective, because we can see that since the end of World War II and the baby boom era, we've had so much comfort and luxury, especially in Europe and in America, and it's led to a lot of complacency. And
comfortably numb.
Really, from this complacency, we've been taken by surprise by things we should have had an awareness of.
Absolutely.
And we're kind of playing catch up now.
Yeah, that's right.
Which is another reason why I'm trying to keep things just simply focused on reigniting that flame of awareness.
Yeah,
for sure.
And you're doing a beautiful job of it. Don't let anybody tell you different, because they lie. Is there anything before we get to the end, because I'm going to finish a little bit early so that we can hear this wonderful piece by Keziah Jones that you've brought to us to the show today. I want to make sure that you've mentioned every single thing that needs to be mentioned. Is there anything we've not gotten to yet that you want to mention?
I think we've covered everything, guys, and great talking to you, and I look forward to sharing more space with you in the future. If anybody does have a question, please just send an email to info@schoolofloveawareness.com. Take a look at the website, schoolofloveawareness.com. You can find links to all our other material there, and support us to support you to create greater awareness and greater life and greater joy. I'd just like to also mention Keziah Jones, who's not potentially as popular in the US as in Europe and the UK. Fantastic artist. Please have a look on his Facebook page, and I hope you enjoy the tunes.
Some good stuff, too. I'm like a music nut, and I'm in love with it already. I've heard it twice. So we're going to enjoy that. And again, I just want to say we honor you. We thank you. And we're so very humbled and proud to have had this time to spend together. And we look forward to working together with you on projects in the future, because this is what the shift is about. Awareness, expansion, and taking responsibility, because there is nothing better than being in control of your very own life.
Thank you so much, India and Cami. It's great to share space with you, and my sentiments as well. And thank you so much for being here and making this all possible. And let's carry on co-creating that space of awareness and love.
Thank you for making it so easy on us.
Thank you.
All right, namaste. We'll call it a show.